All right, Earth Explorers, we're getting very close to showtime. Very close. All you have to do is, all right, sign in and we will all be together. We're trying to get the vault up at Truth Frequency Radio tonight. Looks like it's coming up. Very good. Signing in any moment. About 1 minute. Looking for the show clock. I don't see it yet. There it is. Very good, very good. About 1.5 minutes to go. Go ahead and let the chat room get filled up. All the affiliates to sign in. Let's make sure everybody's live. Oh yeah, look, everybody's on. That's right, William. Tonight we have California candidate Jenny Rae Le Roux on. She was with us a couple of nights ago on Friday for the first round of questions, and that she had another appointment, but she's going to be joining us tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to let a couple more minutes burn off the show clock so we don't bring in the news. Just to let you know, yes, we are live tonight. Looks like we made it through September 11th, all right. 20th anniversary of. For those of you listening to this as an archive, you can skip forward a couple of minutes. We just have to wait for the affiliates to finish signing on. We're waiting for the Truth Frequency Radio studio to come in and get through a couple of minutes of their news break. I have a couple of announcements tonight. I'm sure you have been waiting anxiously for it. Before we actually go live with everything, remember that we no longer allow Google to violate our civil rights here. So we will only be airing a short amount of our program on YouTube. So those of you that got YouTube notifications, you'll be wanting to prime yourself to go to one of these other fine outlets, Foxhole or Twitch or Facebook or DLive or Twitter, or I think you can even go to Odyssey and watch it live. But for sure, all these other platforms, easy to do. Easy to do. All of those will be streaming live. YouTube will not be streaming live because we were going to cut them off after the first story. Okay, about 30 seconds. I know you all are excited about the first weekend in October coming up at the Disclosure Con conference in Pine Top, Arizona. If you don't know anything about it, it's easy to find out. Go to my website, brooksagnew.com, click on the upcoming events tab, and you will be there. And you could be there with us, with all of us. It's great. I think there's still some VIP tickets left, by the way. All right, let's see here. I didn't type that in there, right? Let's do this. Let's go to here. Okay. I'm going to bring the studio in right now.
The appearance of a shiny, bobbling object in the water of Wisconsin's Brule River just upstream from a big sunken oak stump is generating considerable interest among members of the fish community. An 8-pound walleye had this to say after the object appeared shortly after sunrise and began migrating upstream.
We're enraptured, frankly. Is it the shininess or the flickering? And then, of course, there's the wriggling. All I know is I can't take either of my non-stereoscopic eyes off of it.
Numerous area trout and bass now say that decisive action should be taken regarding the object in the near future. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Here we go, hour one. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the truth meets fiction, where the past meets the future, and where all the results are positive. That's the formula X Squared. Any number put into that comes out positive. Couple of announcements. Guess what came in? Oh, you're never going to guess? That's true. It's the new X Squared Radio mugs. But here's the beauty of this. Not only does it have this great, awesome logo on the front, but if you turn it around, it says, "We are the cure. We always have been." You want to get things started in your office place? These are for sale at the brooksagnew.com/store. You need to go there and get one. They're very cost effective. I'm just selling for a little over cost, just enough to make it worth my while to put this in a box and send it to you. Okay, let's get things started. Now, you YouTubers, I respect you. I love you, okay? All 20,000 plus subscribers out there. However, we cannot sustain the continuous violation of our civil rights by Google. And so after the first story tonight, we're going to say bye-bye to you YouTubers. So you're going to have to make your way over to one of these other fine outlets, Foxhole or Twitch or Facebook or DLive or Twitter. You're going to have to go there to see us because YouTube will no longer be hosting our programs. Let's get started. A Mars habitat may have been located. Now, I don't mean there's one already there, but a place for the habitat has been discovered. Mars is bombarded with radiation because it doesn't have a very dense atmosphere, nor does it have a magnetosphere to protect the surface from solar radiation. It doesn't have a nice thick atmosphere like Earth to protect. But nothing can live on the surface, not even humans. All that radiation is a deadly hazard. Now, how can any potential human explorers cope with that on the surface of Mars? Well, they need shelter. And they'll either have to bring it along with them, or they're going to have to build it when they get there somehow, and maybe survive during the construction time. Or maybe not. Maybe they could use natural features as part of their protection. A new study using data from Mars Science Laboratory, Curiosity, has uncovered how Mars's natural landscape features can provide some shelter from radiation. Specifically, it shows how Martian buttes provide protection from high-energy particles from space. The study is titled Directionality of the Martian Surface Radiation and Derivation of the Upward Albedo Radiation. Albedo is the is the amount of energy from the sun that a planet reflects back out into space. Okay? Like, for instance, if you look at our moon, which is easy to do most nights that it's clear, you will notice that the same side of the moon faces us all the time. The other side of the moon, during the time that the moon is dark or new on our side, is very bright. The albedo on the side of the moon that faces us is about 10. That means about 10% of the radiation that strikes the surface of the moon from the sun reflects back out into space. The albedo on the other side of the moon is 60. Yeah, that means that about 60% of the radiation from the sun that strikes the far side of the moon reflects back out into space. Now, I don't know if that percentage is exact, but you see the ratio. It's about 6-1. And a lot of people ask the question, why? Well, it has to do with a thing called the black axiom. The black axiom occurred approximately 25,000 years ago. Our solar system passed through a major dust cloud in the galaxy. And very fast rotating bodies got a thorough coating of these particles, some of them the size of pebbles, which some of them actually made it through the atmosphere, struck the surface and formed lakes in the craters and flattened the forests that were already there. North and South Carolina are covered with these lakes if you could see them from space. And the pebbles go out across the Atlantic Ocean and up into Siberia region. But the very slow rotating planets, like our moon, got half-coated. And we see evidence of that not only on our moon, but on a lot of the asteroids that are very slow rotating out there beyond Mars. Just to give you an idea what albedo is. So RAD is about preparing for human visits to Mars. It detects and measures harmful radiation on Mars that comes from the sun and other sources. This is known as the Radiation Assessment Detector. RAD is about the size of a toaster, and it fits unobtrusively on Curiosity's top surface. Now, one of the areas MSL studied with RAD is the Murray Buttes region. The Murray Buttes region is in the lower Mount Sharp and Gale crater. Curiosity has been there primarily to study geology, especially the sandstone features and a type of layering called cross-bedding. But while there, RAD kept gathering data, and that data showed a drop in the surface radiation. They asked the question, why? MSL Curiosity spent 13 sols parked near a butte in the Murray Buttes area. It primarily conducted surface science and drilling operations while there, but the RAD was also running at the time, and it gave scientists a 13 Mars day reading of radiation data in one location. Now, the RAD data showed that while near the butte, there was a reduction in radiation dose of about 5%. The research team also constructed a sky visibility map showing that 19% of the sky was obscured when the rover was next to the butte. Didn't have a good view of the horizon from which the sun was rising. Now, this isn't a scientific slam dunk when it comes to protecting future human explorers from radiation, but it's very important data. And there's more nuance to the data. Because while driving through the Murray Buttes area, Curiosity didn't have an unobstructed view of the sky due to the terrain features. It couldn't see the sun. So the team constructed a panoramic view of the sky from averages taken over several previous months. So they stitched all these images together to compare the data with what they had collected over the previous 13 days. Now, there's some approximation in the averages, but they're going to have to do. A sky map to illustrate this was put together, and RAD found something else when they did that. Radiation striking things, or humans for that matter, on the surface of Mars, it comes from space. And most of the radiation striking a person or a piece of equipment comes directly from the sky. But some of the radiation is bounced radiation. It's albedo. It's going back out to space. It came from space, hits the ground, and now it's going back out into space. Meaning it's reflected off the surface. And it strikes the objects from underneath. Now, what did Rad find out about that? Well, it's very interesting. It turns out that the same surface features that can offer protection from direct radiation can also increase the reflected radiation. Have you ever been to the beach on a bright sunny day? And have you ever had an umbrella? Maybe. I mean, if you go to Florida, maybe. If you go to California, people are going to think you're weird. But if you go to Florida, you can put these umbrellas up and you can sit under the umbrella so the intense, Florida sunshine doesn't strike your skin directly. But guess what happens to you? You still get sunburned. You know why? Because the sun's reflecting off the sand and striking your body, and you're getting the UV radiation anyway. Well, Rad showed that the buttes can create an increase in the secondary reflected radiation, and that's one of the complexities in understand radiation on Mars. I think if you're going to withstand radiation on Mars, you can't just hide under a cliff in the shade. I think you're going to have to go underground. I really do. The radiation dose on the surface of Mars, it isn't consistent. It fluctuates. Heliospheric changes can affect it, as can the angle of the sky that any explorer might be exposed to. A steeper angle means that radiation has to travel through more atmosphere, which, will protect you. Kind of like late evening sun won't burn you as bad as noonday sun because you're going through more of the atmosphere from an angle. Now, overall, the study helps paint a more complete picture of the Martian radiation environment. There's been lots of thought put into in situ resource utilization on Mars. Of course, shelter is a primary need for explorers on Mars. You're going to have to send it first, like a lot of it, and maybe even use robots from here to put it together, attach all the pieces together. So like in the movie Mars, all that stuff's put together without having to put humans up there to lug it around. But astronauts, they can't spend all their time there. They're going to have to venture out into the radiation. Any mission to Mars involving humans is going to need layers and layers of contingencies. In the event of an emergency, you are too far away to go home. Okay, there's no medevac going to pull you out of there and bring you back to Earth. It ain't going to happen. It's a one-way trip for the most part. Detailed radiation maps that take into account sky exposure and terrain and anything else could definitely save lives. Absolutely. And, when I was on George Norrie's show, Beyond Belief, he asked me that question. He asked me, how long do you think it's going to be before we actually have a colony on Mars? I don't think I told him the answer he wanted to hear. I think you're looking at least 50 years. Because not only does it take that time to build those habitats, it's 7 months. That's the shortest window to Mars to get the Hohmann maneuver. The Hohmann maneuver is kind of like, shooting an arrow out the passenger window of a Ford F-150 traveling 70 miles an hour down the freeway and hitting a target on another car in another pickup truck that's going by you at 120 miles an hour. That's what it's like. That's the Hohmann maneuver. You're going from Earth's orbit out into space using the momentum of Earth's orbit to catch up to Mars's orbit and drop into orbit around that planet. And if you miss, you're done. You're out into space and you will never return. If you miss too short, you have to burn more fuel to catch up with Mars. If you miss too far, you have to burn more fuel to slow down and fall into Mars orbit. In short, you're probably not going to carry enough fuel with you to make that move. That's why the Hohmann maneuver, spelled Hohmann, is the only way to get to Mars. That means every bit of shelter, everything has to be sent to Mars that way and has to be laid there in the same general area, because you're not lugging this stuff hundreds of miles. It's got to be dropped basically in the same football field on Mars in order to be put together. Even if you send remote-controlled tractors up there to drag it into the same football field, you're still talking a lot of energy, a lot of innovation, a lot of invention, a lot of ships that have to be built, a lot of fuel that has to be burnt, and a lot of money. 50 years. 50 years. And the only other way to really make it work is to find a Mars volcanic vent like we have found on the moon, and to develop that vent or be able to drop into that vent so that you protect the people that you send up on Mars. It means they're going to be underground. It means they'll have to venture out of underground to get up there to actually see anything, but it means a lot. All right, we have one caller out there. I'm going to bring David Bramante on because I know he's not going to talk about anything that's going to get me removed from YouTube forever. David, how are you this evening? How's it going out there in California?
Hey, Brooks, it's good. I'm just driving through the Grapevine right now. There's a couple fires.
Well, no, I'm not laughing about the fires. I'm just saying it seems to be always burning over there on the Grapevine.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I'm driving from L.A. through the Grapevine, past the fires, up to Fresno to do a car event. It's kind of my last event before the election day.
Nice, nice. Well, listen, I have a question for you. How confident do you think Californians are that Gavin Newsom will actually be recalled?
I really don't think anyone's confident in any part of this process or the outcome. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And I was just listening to somebody saying, who's been researching it, I guess the Secretary of State can take up to 30 days to confirm the results, and then that gets kicked over to another department, and then they have 6 more days to verify. So we may not even get the results Tuesday or, Wednesday. It may now be another month or so because they might want to drag it out and deflate everybody. But anybody's guess is as good as mine. Nobody knows what's going to happen. That's why it's so critical to vote.
Yeah. And, of course, one thing that the rest of the country probably is not aware of is that in the state of California, ballot harvesting is legal. People can actually...
The whole process is crazy.
Yeah, they can go around, they can collect ballots from the elderly, they could buy ballots from people who are less literate, and some of them are very happy to sell their ballots for $20 or $50 or $100. And then those ballots can be actually voted by Democrats and then sent in. And they count because they're real legitimate ballots. They just weren't voted by the person to whom they were mailed. That's ballot harvesting.
I don't know, of course, everybody, the one side says, oh, yeah, we need to have election integrity and we need to audit everything. And then the other side says, oh, my God, how could you ever question the sanctity of our elections? Of course, there's a little bit of, fraud, but that's okay. The numbers are still very strong and it's only a fraction of the voting, there's not a lot of confidence in the election. So I don't know. We definitely can't go full digital. It was a very tough experience. I think I mentioned it to you when I had to get the nomination signatures. When they announced that the recall was a go, we had 7 days to do a handful of things. One of them was to get nomination signatures, and it was just to get 65 signatures. So I thought, okay, well, hold my drink. I'll be back in an hour. 65 signatures. Give me a break.
Yeah.
It was so hard. 65 strangers. Of course, I got some people I knew. But 65 people to sign my nomination paperwork because the registrar goes through and verifies if the person that signed, they don't have the right address with their signature, well, that gets striked out. There's a lot of things. So I submitted a little over 100. I don't know what the final count was, but obviously I had 65 or greater because I'm on the ballot. That was so painful, but it actually made me really respect old school democracy and having to hit the streets, look people in the eye, get a wet signature. We really need to keep it as close to that type of democracy as possible, especially with so much censorship and manipulation, with big tech.
Well, I know that we don't very often like it when the federal government gets involved in what we call state elections, even if the states are voting for federal offices. But don't you think there
Right.
needs to be some kind of basic guideline, like in order to vote, you have to be in person and you must have ID? Something very basic like that.
100%. Yeah. It's so sad. People ask me, oh, you kind of timidly, like, oh, what do you think about voter ID? I'm like, of course. Of course we need voter ID. I mean, of course. And people, especially in the service, if they're in the military, they have to do mail-in ballot, or you have another system for them. You know, they've been doing mail-in ballots pretty much, you know, for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, since World War
But the mass
II.
population, yeah, we cannot be sending out, you know, millions and millions of ballots. I didn't even get my ballot yet. Can you believe that? I'm one of the candidates. I'm one of the 46 candidates. I haven't even received my mail-in ballot. Where did that go? Who's got it? Did I not get it? Did somebody else get it? It's just so sloppy. We have, you know, there's a lot of human error, and we're working with big numbers, you know, with things getting mailed out. Of course there is error. It's, you know, we could say it's nobody's fault. Maybe there's people maliciously making errors, but just the sheer size of an election, especially for a federal election, but with the state, there's so many people, there's so many opportunities to make mistakes because we're human. So I don't think we have to like point fingers. We just have to make sure it's as fair as possible.
Yeah, and not only that, I think almost every state that's out there is reporting that they got more mail-in ballots back than they actually sent out.
I'm going to really dig into this later this week after the election for California governor. I'm going to look into this because a lot of people have mailed me stuff. I really need to know in my heart of hearts like what happened, because a lot of people have asked me, well, do you think Biden really won? And truthfully, my answer is I'm not sure. I don't know. So I need to do more research on it and see what's been coming to light, you know. But for me to be like, absolutely Biden's the president, who can be so confident on that position? And people that are like, well, he 100% isn't the president. You know, I don't know that you can be that confident either, but we do need to audit it and figure out what happened. And if there's 80 million people that are questioning the results of the election, I mean, then we should have a discussion about it so that everybody's unified.
Well, what do you think happens if these audits run their course and let's say 3 or 4 states decide to recall their electors and the Biden administration drops below the constitutionally required 270 electors to be the administration? What do you think happens then? Do you think we fall into the 12th Amendment?
Oh my God, it's such a mess. Yeah, that would be so crazy, especially with how, like, logistically, it would be such a weird process, but politically, it would be a nightmare. With how divisive everything is right now, it would be, I don't even know how you would do that. I mean, you know, technically, yeah, like what you're saying, but I don't know how you actually could pull it off at this point.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, the Supreme Court.
Everybody's going to think the other side cheated.
Yeah, but I mean, if the Supreme Court has to step forward and say, well, you know, the Constitution does say that you need 50% or better of the electors in order to be president, and you have less than 50%. And they could say, yeah, but we had 50% on election day. And then they could say, well,
that's bullshit, though.
You know, that's
No. Yeah.
that's not what the Constitution. What the Constitution wanted was a president that represented at least half the people. That's what they wanted. That was the intent of the Constitution. So when you have a president that's in office that less than half the people approved of, you have a constitutional crisis. And the Congress needs to step forward then and elect a president.
Yeah. It's such a weird scenario. It's just like, I don't know, everything's so hostile. Tensions are so high. Even us having this conversation, you know, we'll be labeled conspiracy theorists. But it's like we're just having a conversation about a chain of events, you know, a theoretical chain of events. We should be able to have this conversation and not feel like we have to look over our shoulder.
Well, that's because we're not
Unbelievable.
talking about politics. We're talking about government. I didn't mention any parties. I'm just mentioning constitutional requirements.
Just logistically, how are we running this country? Yeah. based off the Constitution. Yeah, we should be able to easily talk about that.
That's a very huge question. And when you say running the country, what exactly do you mean? Because we have over 650 agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations. Who's running that?
Oh, the whole thing is a disaster. You know, today I did another debate after yours, and then I had the most simple epiphany of my life in politics, my short career in politics so far, because I've only been doing this like 60 plus days, barely, just a little over 2 months. The epiphany that I had is that government is literally the problem for every problem that you look at. It's just like it always is the problem. It's so crazy. You pick a category and you can see, for whatever reasons how government got involved, it continues to expand, and then it does exacerbate the problem. So, yeah, to your point with all those departments, it's a nightmare how complicated and sloppy and wasteful it is.
It is.
Not to mention all the compounding restrictions on us.
David, I'm up against a hard break. You drive safely. Thank you so much for calling in. Keep listening, okay?
All right, yeah. Thanks for letting me call in. Appreciate it, Brooks.
No problem. All right, that was David Bermonte, candidate for governor of the state of California. At 10 p.m. tonight, we have Jenny Rae Le Roux. So right now, what we're going to do, we have to do this. I hate to do this because we have so many people listening on YouTube right now. But right now, we have to say bye-bye to YouTube because we're going to go into an area that is more controversial. So please, please go from YouTube to one of the other fine free speech platforms. Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, DLive, Foxhole,